I have never targeted unarmed people. Every natural disaster, no matter how terrible in scale, is still not as tragic as war. Though such events are sad, they are accepted as natural since they are beyond human will and control. War, however, is the most dreadful tragedy humankind has ever faced. War is the moment when humanity ends. Man deliberately directs his resources and intellectual potential into war, into becoming an enemy to one another. The most honorable of all creations, the human being becomes surrounded by such a savage aura. According to rough estimates, up to 1 billion people have perished in the wars throughout history. The desire to involve science and progress in war seems to be something that will not abandon us, humans, until the end of time. The most dreadful consequence is the damage done to morality. There is even a concept called war syndrome, meaning that both those who participate in battles and society as a whole are condemned to go through a long rehabilitation period before returning to normal life. If killing, destruction, and hatred have dominated a person's thinking and morals, then overcoming such corruptive psychological traits inevitably requires time. If it's very possible to penetrate into the depths of the human mind charged with such negative energy, and if another could witness the void there, that person would be horrified by it. Literature and history textbooks glorify heroism, hatred toward the enemy, and irreconcilability in lofty tones. For those fighting this is indeed an absolute source of motivation. In battle, what brings pride to every soldier is how many enemy forces he has eliminated. While one side perceives its own fight as just and its fallen comrades as martyrs, it sees the enemy's dead soldiers as invaders whose deaths are justified, whether from a religious standpoint or as a result of propaganda instilled in them. Interestingly, each side believes it's fighting on the righteous path, that if they fall, they will ascend to paradise, while the enemy will burn forever in hellfire. There has never been a war in which the soldier of an invading army had considered himself an occupier. Regardless of their circumstances, they are motivated under certain labels and believe themselves to be right. This is the result of information and propaganda, an integral component of war that deserves comprehensive study. The death of a soldier serves more as a statistic than a tragedy for either side. During the years of war, I never realized that the enemy soldiers I killed were also regarded as martyrs, just as ours were. The atmosphere and aggressive rhetoric of those times did not allow for such an understanding that the requirement of wartime, and it will always be so. Facing an enemy who attacks you in this manner is completely natural. In times of war, feelings of humanity recede into the background. Yet war also has a particular role in revealing the inner world of a person. One's inner self, morality, and even hidden potential unknown to oneself often surface during war. War is an open stage where words turn into deeds. To be honest, this evokes not so pleasant emotions, because in those moments, you sometimes witness sides of people you know, and those you don't, that can be both disappointing and astonishing. However, what interests me most is another matter. To what extent can a fighter, burdened with the idea of mercilessness toward the enemy, remain faithful to moral and ethical principles? In other words, does excessive hatred toward the enemy impose a boundary not to cross the red line? In a war where human life is reduced to statistics, where life itself is rendered meaningless, is it worth contemplating human values at all? And only many years later, delving into such complex whirlpools of thought, does one begin to understand which moral criteria one truly upheld at the time. This cannot be compensated by propaganda or by the way of thinking shaped by the environment. If all that time you feel remorse for some wrongful step you took, that itself is praiseworthy. For years, I have been searching for the answer to one question. Based on what I have described above, did I ever cross the red line? Analyzing everything down to the smallest details, I've come to the conclusion that, thankfully, there is not a single episode for which I felt remorse. My hatred was directed only towards those who raised arms against us. I never targeted unarmed civilians. Even though the presence of Armenian civilians in the operational zone created serious difficulties, I never once considered harming women occupied with household chores or shepherds tending their flocks. Remaining unseen was the best choice. Wounded or captured enemy soldiers were never my concern. Showing power against a weak, defenseless enemy is itself a sign of weakness. During a reconnaissance diversion operation in the darkness of night, I eliminated enemy fighters from close range. Among them was an Armenian youth, barely 18 or 19 years old. I could tell this from his cries, his voice. That young man's voice still echoes in my ears. I had acted entirely in accordance with the laws of war, and even today, I would not hesitate to do the same. But he was young after all. I was not guilty of his death. He too is remembered as someone who heroically became a martyr in defense of his homeland. After the First World War, during the Gallipoli campaign, which caused enormous human losses, the fallen are commemorated with great respect. Not only Turkish soldiers, but also English and French ones, who were laid to rest with dignity. In Atatürk's words, they too are considered martyrs for their peoples. As time passes, the mercilessness toward the enemy that once filled you with pride is gradually replaced by a desire to recall episodes of compassion toward the enemy, if such moments exist. The love and care of my people and my state, which I have always felt as a national hero, gives me pride. Yet before being a national hero, every man is simply a human being. He has an inner world and sometimes contradictory thoughts. I would like to share another thought. Every nation takes pride in its historical heroes. We say that new heroes will continue to emerge, but when are heroes born? Unfortunately, powerful armies do not produce heroes. If every unit of the army carries out its duties professionally and victories are achieved through the strength of the state and the army, there is no place for individual heroism. It's the strong state, strong economy, and strong leader that bring the army to this level. Heroes emerge only when the state, the army, or society is weak, and resistance against the enemy depends on individuals. While hearing about the birth of new heroes brings pride, it also leaves the issue I mentioned above unresolved. Would it not be better if we never had to long for heroes, if we always raised sons ready to act heroically, and if we possess such a strong state and army that no one would ever dare even dream of waging war against us? Let there be no war. Literature and history will always find enough themes to explore. I'm the last Azerbaijani citizen to be awarded the title of national hero while still alive. May everything be for the sake of peace, security, and prosperous life. May our people never again be tested by war. May there never again be a need for heroes. Ibad Huseynov, National Hero of Azerbaijan.